Everyone, and welcome to our certifications workshop series with the Small Business Administration. Today's topic will cover women-owned small business certification and updates and changes to the program. My name is Catherine Walsh, and I am with NBDC PTAC, and I am going to moderate the webinar for you today. Our PTAC program is part of the Nebraska Business Development Center. We are a statewide program, and the government contracting services we offer include assistance with registration, assistance with all of the certifications and self-certifications, proposal and bid review, and assistance with post-award processes such as debriefs, contract compliance, and invoice submission. So we have moved to all virtual events for the time being. The next webinar that we have will take place this Thursday, August 13th, and be presented by Joshua Frank from RSM Federal. He will cover past performance. Coming up in almost a month now, on September 11th, we are having part 1 of our Meet the Buyers conference. We have decided to hold the conference in 2 parts due to COVID-19. And the first part will be a half-day event of virtual presentations and speakers. So we will have Joshua Frank from RSM Federal. If you've attended any of his webinars, you know that he is a very good speaker, and he will be presenting on a topic that we do not have as part of our webinar series. We will have someone from GSA, and they will be doing a presentation on GSA schedule and updates and changes. We will also have John Maddox from Co-Prince Law speaking on the Mentor Protege program and joint ventures. So you can sign up for this half-day event on our eCenter page. Then part 2 of our Meet the Buyers conference will take place on October 20th and allow for you to meet one-on-one with federal agencies and buyers virtually. So we will have a list coming to you about exactly who is participating. Right now I have about 12 agencies that have accepted or confirmed that they will be participating, and we will have you sign up for one-on-one meetings that will take place over Zoom, and you will have specific time slots for those. So you can kind of save the date and pre-register for that also on our eCenter page. For our full list of events and to register, you can visit ptac.unomaha.edu/events, which is also the URL listed right now on your welcome slide. You can also shoot me an email after the webinar. My email address is cwalsh, W-A-L-S-H, @unomaha.edu. Okay, so for today's webinar, if you have any questions, please type them into the question box, and we'll have time at the end to address them all. I'd also like to note that unfortunately we are not able to send out the PowerPoint slides for the webinar. Just want to give you a heads up so you can take notes. I also will be recording this, so if you would like a link to the recording, just please send me an email afterwards requesting it. We do have quite a few handouts. I believe we have 5 handouts for you today that Lisa will be referencing throughout the presentation. So if you have not downloaded those yet, please do so. You can find the handouts on your control panel in the handouts tab, which is the second to the last tab. If you click on that arrow, then there'll be a drop-down menu and you can download them all there. Our webinar today is presented by Lisa Tedesco, the Deputy District Director of the Nebraska District Office at the U.S. Small Business Administration. Earlier in her career, Lisa worked on the other side of things, working for a large prime contractor. So we are so grateful to have her because she's extremely knowledgeable in the government contracting area. And she's here today with us to talk about one of the many programs that are available to help small businesses compete in the marketplace. So welcome, Lisa. I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Great, thank you, Catherine. Hopefully everyone can hear me. I'm testing out a new headset for this new virtual world we're living in. I'm good to go?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, thank you very much, Catherine. Well, welcome everybody. We appreciate you joining us today. Again, as Catherine mentioned, my name is Lisa Tedesco. My official title is I am the Deputy District Director for the Nebraska District Office of the Small Business Administration here in Omaha. It's the one office that we have in the state of Nebraska. but I guess my everyday job, or what I'm passionate about, is government contracting. I've been doing it for a long time. As Catherine mentioned, I've worked on both the private sector and now the public sector for 10 years, about 15 years prior to that in the private sector. So today we're going to talk about a long-awaited program. The Woman-Owned Small Business Program is, as you all probably know by now that you're on this webinar, is finally a certification. So that's rolling out as we speak. It actually, well, let me go ahead and go to slide 2 here. Let's see if I can get this to work. No, I can't get my, hold on, my apologies. I want it page down. There we go. All right, there's our beautiful new logo. All right, so this is our primary slide. I will stick here real quick for a second. I'm going to reference the website throughout. The SBA has created a nice new website, well, a couple of them, one for certification that we're going to talk about, but we do have a page on our main website called WSB Ready. So any future updates or things that come along, or even some of the things that I've included as part of the handouts today, and including the basic information we'll be talking about, you'll be able to find on the website at the WOSB Ready site. So that's the branding, if you will, for the rollout of the certification. So again, if there's any new updates as well, they will be posted to that website. All right, so, excuse me. Okay, so we're going to talk about, again, the certification program now, that is the WOSB contracting program, or as you also may know, is the EDWOSB contracting program. I did include a few slides that we're going to talk about kind of the basics a little bit of the program as well. For those of you that might be just brand new to this particular contracting program, not just the certification side, but sort of what are the program benefits to being certified as a WOSB. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, because as a woman-owned small business, and on this webinar, we're looking to build capacity, grow our contracting dollars awarded to woman-owned small businesses via set-asides. So we're going to talk about that a little bit, and there are a couple of nuances to this program that have existed that have remained with the certification in terms of how contracting officers award contracts. So we're going to cover that a little bit. And yeah, so the certification program itself, as you may or may not know, a little history. So every year, the NDAA, or National Defense Authorization Act, is enacted every year, which basically sets the budget for the Department of Defense. And within that budget are all kinds of regulations that interested parties, if you will, Congress people and such, are looking to either update, edit, change, add, take away as part of that process. That's usually our initial Bible, if you will, that sort of sets the upcoming year as to what's going to be happening. So the Woman-Owned program, becoming a certification, actually was part of the NDAA in 2015. So it's taken the SBA a few years to put the program together and go through the various stages of the regulatory process, and then ultimately implement the program, which is where we've finally reached. So as you know it, or at least some of you on the call probably know it, it's been a self-certification up to now. It'll actually remain that for a little transitional period, and then it will go into a full effect. So we're going to talk about that. So, oh, look at this lovely slide. So a couple of these slides were created for me by headquarters. Okay, so just to give you a little bit of background, again, for those of you that are new, every year we look at procurement goals for prime contracting in the various socioeconomic categories that are designated by the federal government. Some of these may somewhat overlap what you may see at a local government level, but they may be worded a little bit different and have different requirements and different goals. So the ones on your screen, including small business, which would be the 5th socioeconomic category, these are the categories that we recognize in the procurement process federal wide. So when you see these terms, you'll know that they are for federal procurement only. And so again, as I mentioned, we have goals that Congress and SBA monitor together every year to make sure that the agencies are actually contracting with small businesses. And these are the current goals. And so the top one, of course, is the one we're going to talk about today, the Woman-Owned Small Business Program. We have a goal of 5%. So again, Congress sets or mandates those goals. SBA is actually the oversight agency that monitors to make sure that agencies are actually meeting those goals. I did hear we will be releasing FY19's numbers here later this week. So we'll be able to see where we're at for FY19. Usually takes about 6 months into the current fiscal year to disseminate and analyze all the data from the prior year. So again, we're getting ready to release those numbers. However, we have seen a trajectory upward of contracting with woman-owned small businesses. We have had a little bit of, just as a side note, we have had a little bit of review from outside agencies on the program. And we do know that one of the issues that we have had with not meeting goals is really this certification problem. Leaving it as a self-certification isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it does leave room for interpretation as to how you're supposed to do it. And we do believe that's caused some of the issues in the program. So it was very important to get this the certification in place so that we can make sure agencies are really meeting their goals and that actually woman-owned small businesses are winning those awards. So that's really the push with getting this going. So we hope to see this number increase. Just as a side note, those other 3 categories, the 8A program, Hub Zone, and Service Disabled Veteran Program, again, those are goals that we also monitor to make sure agencies are contracting with those types of small businesses. And as Catherine mentioned earlier, check our calendar throughout the year. We do classes on these other programs as well. Hub Zone program has had a lot of changes also in the regulation in the last 6 to 8 months. So look out for our next class on that program as well. Okay, so on the contracting side, before we talk about eligibility, again, I wanted to spend a little bit of time just quickly talking about kind of an overview of the contracting program itself for those of you on the call that may be brand new. So this program is a little bit nuanced in the sense that any other socioeconomic category that you may see set-asides. And I guess I should mention what a set-aside is real quick. So agencies, when they do their market research, they're out there looking for small businesses that can potentially do the work. And if they can find at least 2, which I have another slide on this that we'll talk a little bit more, but in general, if they can find 2 small businesses, at least 2 small businesses can do the work in a particular socioeconomic category, they will look to set that aside for only businesses that carry that certification or carry that designation to be able to bid. So in theory, when an agency is doing their market research, when they identify a scope of work, they will associate a particular NAICS code or North American Industry Classification System code to that opportunity. And in theory, that could be set aside in any category. So they could decide for any, for anywhere from buying paper for the office to, building a major building. They would be able to set that aside if they can find at least 2 or more small businesses that could compete for that work. However, the woman-owned program is a little bit different. So when this program was created, the idea again was to help increase opportunity for businesses owned by women, generally in industries and categories that are generally underrepresented by women. Now, I do believe that there's going to come a day once certification is in place, this may be lifted. So it may end up just like every other program. But for now, it is only this program is only in industries where women are either underrepresented or substantially underrepresented. So the first thing you will want to do as a small business owned by a woman to see if you will qualify for the contracting program, you need to make sure that your North American Industry Classification System, or NAICS codes, apply to the program. And I will talk a little bit about it, but in the essence of time, I will say this is something that if you're not sure how to do this or what makes the most sense even for what NAICS codes you should select as part of your business, you'll definitely want to work with a PTAC counselor. They can sit down with you and really strategize what industry system codes make sense for your business. And without getting too far into it, just so you understand, again, every opportunity that's put out on which is now the Beta SAM site, or the former Federal Business Opportunities site, every opportunity open for bid has an associated NAICS code. So you would need to know for this program whether you qualify as a woman-owned small business or an economically disadvantaged woman-owned small business for that particular opportunity. And of course, as with any of the programs, that you need to at least be a small business as well first. So this particular program does only include about, as you can see on the graph, about 446 six-digit NAICS codes. So a full NAICS code has 6 digits, close to 500 of those out of about 2,500 codes. So you'll definitely want to review the list to see where your NAICS codes fall. NAICS codes are either in this program are either going to fall under the ED-WOSB listing or program, and about 366 codes will be under the WOSB program. And the reason I mentioned what you'll see in parentheses, I think it's important to see what's evolved in this program. So, all ED-WOSBs, so all economically disadvantaged woman-owned small businesses, are automatically WOSB, obviously, but not the other way around. So originally, there were a lot more codes that were represented under the ED-WOSB program. Well, obviously, not as many people qualify for that program because it's another layer, obviously, of disadvantage past just being woman-owned. And after a complete overhaul of the program, about halfway through, it's been a few years ago, they re-reviewed those codes and actually put a lot more of those codes under the WOSB program so that more woman-owned businesses would qualify. So of course now you can see there's a high majority of them are under the WOSB program. So this is just a screenshot. Again, you can find the listing of the Excel spreadsheet on the WOSB Ready site about halfway through the page. You'll see I screenshotted the website itself. You'll download the Excel sheet, that little red button, and up will pop this spreadsheet. So there's 3 tabs. One is every single NAICS code numerically in order, and you would be able to see which program it falls under. And they also separated those into 2 separate sheets as well. So you could also review just WOSB or just ED-WOSB. So what that means, if you select a NAICS code, and I'll just pick one off of here again. I don't know how big everyone's screens are, so hopefully you can see this, but a very common one would be 238220, which is plumbing, heating, and HVAC contractor, basically. So if you are an HVAC contractor, under a NAICS code 238220 is one of your NAICS codes. As you can see, as you scroll over to the right, that's part of the WOSB program. So that means you will only see that an opportunity for HVAC come out on Beta SAM and it will be for a WOSB set aside. So women-owned small businesses only would be able to bid on that opportunity. So again, conversely, just scrolling down, just using this, what I have on the screen, if you were in the apparel manufacturing business, so 315220, so let's just say that that's what you did for a living, you're only going to see those opportunities come up as an EDWOSB set aside. So you would have to know if you qualify for the EDWOSB program or the economically disadvantaged program before you could bid on that work. So again, you're only going to see opportunities come available or come open in one category or the other. So again, this is why you'll want to sit down with a PTAC counselor and probably strategize what this looks like for you to understand, are you going to see work or opportunities come available depending on what category, socioeconomic category you are eligible for. And this is a slide we've used for a while that I think is just a good illustration to help you understand that you may even be both. So this is just a screenshot of a generic, a business's SAM registration. In this particular business, these are the NAICS codes that she has listed. And so you can see with the different things that she does, again, going back to the spreadsheet, some categories of business she does, she's woman-owned small business. But then other categories, she would be considered economically disadvantaged woman-owned. And then she may have a NAICS code on there that she's neither. And even though it's work she does, it's not something she's going to see a set aside in. So you just have to understand the differences of, what you do. Again, as long as you're economically disadvantaged, you're going to qualify for your woman-owned small business set-asides as well. So in theory, this particular person could bid on every NAICS code she has up there as a set-aside, with the exception of that last one, which isn't applicable to the program at all. So hopefully that makes some sense. If you have questions, go ahead and type them in and we'll address those when we get to the end. Sometimes it can be a little bit confusing. Now, I did not include a screenshot and I didn't put any slides in this particular presentation showing opportunities on Beta SAM, but you could do a search by NAICS and by set-aside category to see what comes up as an ED WOSB set-aside or a WOSB set-aside, and then you would know if you need, do you qualify for that particular opportunity. So just a quick couple of slides on stats I mentioned earlier. Again, we'll be releasing FY19 numbers this week, but in FY18, we did do very well. $22 billion to woman-owned small business set-asides or prime contracting program, over 16,000 WSB prime contractors. Looks like the primary industries were professional services and construction, which is what we do typically see year after year. And just a listing of the top 5 agencies. Oh, SBA, look at that. We were the top agency who awarded contracts to woman-owned small businesses, and then so on down the list. So again, you'll want to do some research. We talk about this with overall marketing strategy for your business, whether it's woman-owned set-asides or any federal contracting opportunities. You'll want to do your research. Look at where you're seeing a lot of opportunities come available with which agencies. Again, what NAICS codes are they using to award that type of work? And you can, start to collect trends and see how does this work actually get awarded. So again, I'll mention this throughout my presentation. If you're not already working with PTAC, you should be. They are the ones that can really sit down with you to help you do some research to see where these opportunities are for you. Nebraska, we like to brag about our numbers in Nebraska because we do very well. Businesses in Nebraska do very well. Based on the goals, the national goals that I mentioned earlier, which is sort of that column, the goal on the left, how we did in 2018 in the state of Nebraska, we far exceeded our goals, over doubling most of our goals. And the woman-owned program is no exception. More than actually tripled our goal in the WOSB program. So again, woman-owned small businesses do very well in Nebraska. Incidentally, you can search to find out who the woman-owned small businesses are. There will be some changes that will come to that as the certification gets in place, but the dynamic small business search, or SAM, is a way to be able to go out and search who are some of the small businesses that are designated or self-certified as of right now as woman-owned small businesses, to kind of get an understanding of the landscape. As well, when you do your market research, you'll be able to see who is winning those awards as well as woman-owned small businesses. So you can do a little research into your competition as well. And sometimes it's good just to see if you are, as I mentioned earlier, maybe an HVAC woman-owned small business contractor. See what other contractors are, in your state or the states that you want to do work in. See who your competition is. So again, I mentioned set aside. So this is just a slide that kind of sums that up for you. Contracting officers and agencies will select the NAICS code, whether it be a WOSB NAICS code on that list or an ED WOSB NAICS code. They will assign that NAICS code to that particular opportunity, so you'll be able to see that right away. Prior to assigning, whether it be WOSB or ED WOSB, they will do their market research. If you've been on any of our other webinars or our other classes, you've heard us talk about the rule of two. So the rule of two is, again, where the agencies are doing their market research, and they're required by law to locate at least 2 small businesses, or in this case, 2 woman-owned small businesses that they think could perform the work, and will submit an offer. And if they can find at least 2, then that's how we get them to set it aside as one of these categories. So they can also sole source as well. So I will say it's not as common to see sole source opportunities. Actually, all categories, HUBZone, woman-owned, and service disabled vet, have opportunities for sole source. However, I mentioned again, it is not quite as common because they have to rule out competition first. So they do have to find at least 2 small businesses that they think can perform the work. If they legitimately cannot find at least 2, and they do only find 1, and they do believe they can award it at a fair and reasonable price to a responsible contractor, so there's language throughout the regulations that what is the definition of fair and reasonable, what is the definition of responsible, at a maximum contract value, as you can see, $6.5 million in manufacturing or $4 million all other, so it is capped. So if all those things being said are met, they could potentially sole source that opportunity. So as you can probably tell from just my description there's a lot of tests that have to be performed, if you will, and have to check the box prior to actually making it to a sole source award. So is it hard for an agency to justify a sole source? Yes. But can it be done? Yes. So it is possible. Probably, quite honestly, won't see it as often, or haven't seen it as often up to now, just simply because it is a self-certification, and the risk associated is a little bit different as well. But now that it's a certification, I think maybe we may see more opportunities for sole source. But there are a lot of women-owned small businesses, and it's a highly competitive field. So again, to only find 1 that can reasonably perform the work is also, a challenge as well. But it is an opportunity. It is out there. Again, HUBZone program is the same thing. I know HUBZone certified businesses who know that they work in a niche business, and so they very much market themselves, knowing that there's an opportunity for sole source work. So again, if that's something that you think might be within your realm. You may want to, again, talk to PTAC about, strategies for this, but just understanding that there is opportunity. So things like, again, I'm not addressing beta SAM or looking at federal business opportunities or contracting opportunities out there, but as you're reviewing sources sought, or opportunities that agencies are putting out there where they're just doing market research, they're just seeking you out, you want to make sure that you're finding those and responding to them, again, in the hopes that they will at least set it aside for woman-owned small business. But again, even further, if you're the only one that can do the work, potentially sole source it. So something to keep in mind. So just, I wanted to mention a little bit about to you to understand how it currently works from a contracting officer's responsibility. It's basically just the process on how they find, how they award to you, and first how they solicit it, and then how they award to you. So I didn't include a slide on this. Well, I included some slides at the end where we're going to talk about how that you need to upload documentation into the new system. But we do have the old system, which is just certify.sba.gov, where you have to upload documents into a repository. So if you're currently self-certified, this term repository. We talk about it a lot. So I just kind of want to mention that, and then a little bit of what the difference will be moving into the certifying world. So again, contracting officer's responsibility, I've kind of already mentioned the first 4 here. So they select the NAICS code, they're going to conduct their market research, they're going to look hopefully to set it aside in an eligible NAICS code, again, depending on whether it's a WOSB code or an EDWOSB code, with that side note of potentially sole sourcing it. Then they're going to solicit it out on beta SAM as a WOSB or EDWOSB set aside. What they have to do then is look in SAM to make sure that you have designated yourself in SAM under your reps and certs, that you've checked the box that says you are a self-certified woman-owned small business. So that is our current process right now. Once they've decided that you are the apparent successful offerer, so they've collected your bids, they've done their review and their evaluation, they've potentially selected the business for award. What they currently do right now is they have to go into that same repository where a self-certified woman-owned small business has uploaded their documents, and they need to verify that you've included all of the documents that are required. And they have a checklist, which is real similar to the checklist that you would have as a woman-owned small business on all of the documents that you've had to uploaded, and then you've gone into your SAM and you've marked the box that you're self-certified woman-owned small business, or again, EDWOSB. They have that checklist. They go into the repository as well on certify.sba.gov, verify that you have your documentation in there. And then if you do, they award the contract. Just as a side note, I'm going to actually talk a little bit about protest. But because you are the apparent successful offerer, if they look in there and you have not uploaded your documents, so worst case scenario, you bid on this contract, they evaluated your proposal, you had the best solution to whatever their problem was. It was, again, a WOSB set aside. You maybe didn't realize that you had to go upload into the repository a bunch of documents. So this is one of the issues we've had with the program. Small businesses, woman-owned small businesses have good intent, but sometimes you just don't know what you don't know, right? You don't know that you have to upload into a repository. So you bid, they go to verify, and you're not in the system. So they actually have to protest that award. So they have to file a protest. The agency is considered an interested party. They file the protest, and this is their mechanism basically for moving on to bidder number 2. So, but if not, if you have everything in there, they do award the contract. Where you're going to see the change is back up under number 5. So just like any of our other certifications that we have, which is currently the 8A program and the Hub Zone program, all they have to do is verify that you are active and show that you're certified at the time of your offer. And as long as you are certified in the system, then they can award the contract. So essentially, number 7 is what will go away once we go to a certification. So no more worrying about a repository, making sure the documents are in a repository. Now, yes, you will have to upload documents into the system for the actual certification itself, but a contracting officer will not have to go into the repository. And I'll just jump a little ahead from my slides. As you may have seen, that starts on October 15th. So we're currently in our transition period right now where your self-certification is still your eligibility for award. So up until October 15th, the repository and the self-certification will still be there. But we'll get more into that again in a little bit. I'll just kind of describe the timeline a little bit better. So just a quick slide about self-marketing yourself. Again, I think the best thing to do is honestly is to work with a PTAC counselor. Some of the greatest value that you're really going to get is their ability to assist you with honing in on this federal market, especially if you're new to federal contracting. As you can imagine, it's a very, very large market. Therefore, the strategy that it takes, you don't want to obviously spend time just spinning your wheels. So you do want to do a fair amount of research before you really jump into it to not only make sure that it's right for you, but to understand where those opportunities are. Because especially depending on the type of work you do, you know, the federal government is about a $450 billion a year marketplace with thousands of agencies. Some agencies that you may not even know are out there that may buy, you know, what you sell. So you really want to put some effort into doing market research. The great thing about federal dollars, you know, if you think about it, every dollar that the government spends is a taxpayer dollar. So the information is out there. It's just a matter of understanding how to find it, how to disseminate it, you know, how to understand it and put a strategy together to go after it. So there are various websites. We talk about it in some of our other classes. Again, if you happen to be brand new to contracting, both PTAC and SBA, we offer some kind of contracting 101 type classes. Actually, we have one next week, Thursday of next week, where we kind of just get into the general understanding of the marketplace. So you may want to think about that class if you're brand new to contracting. Already mentioned that. I think what I will mention with this slide, I guess I kind of jumped. I talked about set-asides and sole source contract awards. Again, agencies are trying to meet their goals every year. Congress and SBA monitors those goals. So we're always looking to make sure that they're setting aside in those various categories, which, by the way, if you qualify for more than one category, even better. Even if they do a WOSB set-aside, but you also happen to be a veteran and maybe your business is located in a hub zone, they can actually take credit for awarding that contract. Even though it was a WOSB set-aside, they can take credit for awarding in those other categories. So again, part of your strategy, part of your marketing strategy to do what makes sense for your business. But obviously, you need to be able to do the work first and meet the scope of work and meet the need of the government. But if you do, obviously, the more categories that you can meet for them, the better to help them meet those goals. So keep that in mind. You know, opportunities to build capacity and grow can also be done through joint ventures and the All Small Mentor Protege program. So Catherine mentioned earlier, they have someone from Co-Prince Law who's kind of the known guru, if you will, legal team who works in the field of federal government contracting. So I would encourage you to participate. They are a wealth of knowledge. But if you can't make that date, you could always come back. We'll be offering that class by yours truly, me. I think later in the year as well, we'll be doing another one on the Mentor Protege program and strategies for joint venturing. Joint ventures are the name of the game these days, particularly with the size of contracts growing larger and larger, and scopes of work becoming much more complex. Really does make it difficult, quite honestly, for any one small business to be able to bid on that contract on their own. So joint venturing has become a popular strategy to bring in teams of businesses, if you will, together to pursue that work as a prime contractor. So, but there are a lot of risks and nuances to putting proper joint ventures together. So I would encourage you, if you see classes on that, you should definitely attend if that's something, again, that becomes part of your marketing strategy. But also the All Small Mentor Protege program. We won't go into that too much on this class, but certainly give that a consideration as well. Again, it's the same idea. You form teams with particularly large businesses. So if you have a large business in your industry that you've built a good relationship with, perhaps you've subcontracted to them already in the past and it's been a good working relationship, you may want to work with them on formalizing that partnership through the All Small Mentor Protege program. If you have a approved Mentor Protege agreement, essentially the two of you together can pursue small business contractors. So you are, by the terminology and the regulation, you're excluded from affiliation. Therefore, you could pursue a small business, or in the case of the class today, a woman-owned small business set aside, and your large business mentor would be considered small. So what does that mean? It really, if done properly, it really can be a win-win situation for both parties. It provides you with capacity that you may not otherwise have, via a large business partner. And it also provides them, opportunities to get access to contracts that they may not have been able to get access to otherwise. So small business contracts are getting larger and larger. So it's definitely caught the attention of large businesses who want to find ways to get access to those contracts as well. So it really can be a win-win program. Just in the last couple of years, any small business can now participate in that program. So it used to be, if you've been in contracting a while, you'll know that it was only available to 8A certified firms, but now it's open to any small business can form a mentor protege with a large company and form joint ventures under that to pursue work. So you may want to consider that. And then, of course, as a woman-owned small business via SBA, you have access to other types of training and assistance, and particularly bonding assistance as well if you're a contractor. So you could go to our local website as well, sba.gov/NE for Nebraska. We have lots of information about some of these different things out there as well. So real quickly, I just want to mention, so if you've gotten this far, and maybe some of you are multitasking because we're doing this virtually, and maybe you've looked at the list of NAICS codes on that spreadsheet already, you've pulled it up, and you think, well, darn, my NAICS codes aren't included. Well, not all is lost for you. If you already know that you have a good product or service that you can sell to the government, you definitely should still pursue federal government contracting. The only thing that you wouldn't be able to do is actually bid on those WOSB or EDWOSB set-asides. But if you bid on a small business set-aside, or even just a full and open competition not a set-aside, a full and open competition contract, or maybe you're a veteran, you're going to bid on some veteran set-asides. Just know that, again, as I mentioned earlier, you aren't, again, pursuing directly opportunities in a WOSB set-aside category, but they can take credit for awarding you contracts as a woman-owned business who happens to be small. So that's kind of how we say it. You're a WOB, you're a woman-owned business, but you're also a small business. So when you fill out your SAM profile, you're obviously going to put in there that you're a small business, because you'll have already known that you're small based on your NAICS codes. And then you're going to check the box that you're a woman-owned business. So again, you're not going to be pursuing woman-owned small business set-asides, but it's definitely important to those agencies because they can take credit for awarding contracts to you as a woman-owned small business. So it's still important to just be a WOB. You're just not pursuing set-asides. And in this slide, I'd just like to mention too, there's a little difference, obviously, as I mentioned in my very first slide. The name of the categories are what the federal government follows. You will see other types of categories like WBE is probably the most common, a woman business enterprise. That is different. So you see that mostly in local government, particularly state governments that have WBE or MBE, minority business enterprise programs. Again, those are different. WBE at the federal level only applies to the Department of Transportation, and actually it's because it's really a quasi program. Funding comes from the federal side, but it's managed at the state level, so that's why you'll see them follow the WBE program. So you may want to look into becoming WBE certified as well if you're a woman-owned small business, to particularly look at opportunities if you think the DOT is an agency that you're interested in at the federal level. But again, depending on what state you're in, the state of Nebraska in and of itself does not recognize minority or woman-owned designations, but certainly other states do. So just know that even if you now get certified under SBA's WOSB program, that is, again, a different certification than what you may do at the WBE level, again, depending on what state you want to work with. So know that those are different and take two different types of certifications, if you will. Okay, so enough about that. So we'll just real quickly talk a little bit about eligibility. Again, this is now going back to the federal program, the WOSB eligibility requirements. So I already mentioned that you have to be a small business. So again, if you're not sure to how to determine whether you're a small business, again, if you're brand new, work with PTAC. They can talk to you about your industry, kind of what are the areas that you work in, and help you designate those 6-digit NAICS codes that will apply to each industry that you work in. I will say though, most small businesses, you probably really only have one primary NAICS code, honestly, sort of one main thing you do. But as you grow, you may add some, and you may add some NAICS codes that are, complementary to what you do. So if you're in construction, honestly, I haven't even counted, there's probably 50 construction NAICS codes that are all different specialty codes. So you may do like general construction, but you may have an arm that does HVAC or an arm that does, roofing or whatever. So important to know what your NAICS codes are, and you want to make sure you're a small business under those codes. For this program, you have to be, so it has to be majority ownership. So we go by 51%. So you have to be at least 51% unconditionally and directly owned and controlled by a woman. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what ownership and control look like. This is a piece, though, that you will definitely want to look at the regulation. So I actually should have, in some of my other presentations, I include a slide on the regulation, and I didn't in this one. But it is important for you to understand the regulation a little bit. It's actually written pretty user-friendly. It's not full lawyer speak. But I would suggest that you just take a perusal. So the CFR, Code of Federal Regulation, is what the regulation that oversees the various small business programs. So 13 CFR is the one for basically for SBA or industry. And then Part 127 is the regulation on the woman-owned small business program. So I think it's important to look at that, or if not, if you don't feel like looking at it and you can afford a lawyer, it might be important to talk to your legal counsel about how to write your bylaws and your articles of organization to make sure that you show that the woman not only unconditionally owns it, but is in control of the company. But at Part 127, you can get more details about ownership and control as well. The Code of Federal Regulation used to be a book. I have a bunch of books in my office when it used to be printed, but you can actually get it online now at eCFR for electronic, so electronicCFR.gov. You could look at actually not only this program, but the other programs as well. But unconditional ownership, just as a summary, it can't be subject, that ownership can't be subject to any conditions, agreements, or other arrangements that could cause your company to be taken over by someone else. Now, if you pass away and you've written your bylaws or your articles of organization for something to happen to your business, if you pass away, that's understandable. And of course, you would lose your certification anyway. But outside of that, they cannot be able to basically take control of your business. The woman must be direct ownership, at least 51%, which means direct ownership means the woman has to own the business. A business can't own the other business. So a business owned by another entity owned by a woman does not qualify. The ownership has to be direct via the female. And control, again, summary version is long-term day-to-day operations of the business is controlled by a woman, which I have a few bullets about that. So again, just a summary of what some of these requirements are. The woman must hold the highest officer position. So again, these are the kind of things that now as a certification, they're going to be looking for in your documentation that you provide, that you must hold the highest officer position. You will have to include a resume in your certification. So you have to show that you have the experience, at least the managerial experience to run the business, for the type of business that it is. And you must manage that concern on a full-time basis during normal working hours. You could potentially, as a certification, you may show that you might work part-time doing something else, but you'll have to be specific about what that is and what the hours of that other work is. But generally speaking, normal business hours, which the regulation even states, I believe, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday is considered normal working hours. So again, I mentioned this already, all of your articles of organization, your bylaws, all of these things have to show that you clearly, as Jane Doe, are in charge of controlling this business. No one else can take that control from you. So no males or other entities can have the power to exercise control. And a nuance with this is there's no minimum amount of time that you have to be operational. So you could start your business now and then get certified right away. Versus like the 8A program, you do have to be in business at least 2 years. So no minimum amount of time the business has to be operational. So that's just, to be woman-owned again. Really one primary factor, that 51% of direct ownership and control. Economic disadvantage, so to see if you qualify for that next tier, these are basically the 3 pieces that we look at. So your net worth, your income averaged over 3 years, and the fair market value of all of your assets. So your net worth can't exceed $750,000. Your 3-year average income can't be $350,000 or more, and all your assets can't be valued at more than $6 million. So actually, with this new certification now, when you go to Beta Sam, which I'm going to show you a couple screenshots, but when you go to the new certification, there is actually an eligibility tool, if you will, out there that you can walk through as well, that will ask you some questions that you could look at to see if you meet some of these criteria. Again, as well, the regulation spells out exactly what is included as part of these criteria, as well as the checklist that I'm going to mention. So there's various places that you'll be able to get the details. But to save us time, I just wanted to give you a general overview. These are the 3 areas we look at from an economic disadvantage standpoint. So to be again, to make sure that you're eligible, you'll want to run through that tool, I would suggest. But again, we've already mentioned these, but this slide kind of reiterates it. You do have to show you have the managerial experience to run the business. Again, you have to hold the highest officer position. Make sure that obviously you have the proper NAICS code. So that's the first thing you want to do, is before you get certified and go through all this work of collecting documentation, make sure your NAICS codes are included as part of the program. You have the 51% ownership and control issue. You do have to manage the daily operation, and again, no minimum time in business. So just a summary overview of understanding whether you want to pursue or should pursue this certification. So we're going to talk a little bit about starting the process. So I've kind of already mentioned it throughout, but you want to make sure that your company is already registered in SAM. So the way that we currently do it under the self-certification, you get your business registered in SAM, then you go to certify.sba.gov, you upload your documentation into this repository, you are attesting to the fact that you've included everything and everything is accurate, correct, and honest and so forth. Then you go back into your SAM and you mark the box that you are a woman-owned small business and you qualify for the woman-owned small business program. So that will be the current process again until October 15th. Once the full certification goes into effect, SBA will actually be the one that will, actually what they'll do is they'll go into, as of right now, it is still the Dynamic Small Business Search, or DSBS for short. And they will mark that as certified. So if some of you have maybe been to that website, you've maybe seen some of the certifications in there like HubZone or 8A, it marks it, SBA marks it certified and the date. They'll do the same thing. Now, what we are being told is there is going to be hopefully a trigger for SAM that will do that. We're not sure about that yet. Should be, and it'll pull it into SAM as well. But obviously you'll need to make sure you're registered in SAM, not only to designate yourself, but in order to register your company in the new system, the beta certify system, you'll have to have an active registration in SAM. And they just include a shot. I'm sure all of you are familiar with SAM. Again, if you're not, I think SAM, I could be wrong if there's PTAC people on the phone. I think it's running okay right now, but your PTAC counselors are the best people to understand the ins and outs of SAM. So again, if you're having trouble with getting registered or where to check boxes or what you need to do, you'll want to work with PTAC to get yourself into this system, because before you can ever upload a document in the new SBA system for the certification, you have to have an active registration in SAM. Okay, so I've kind of mentioned these dates, so we'll talk a little bit about the timeline. So right now, as of today, the current self-certification process is in effect until October 15th. So the regulation stated July 15th, which you have probably heard. And any correspondence or press releases that have been put out, you were being told that on July 15th was when it actually started, the certification process. So you needed to go in to certify, and if you were already in there as a self-certified small woman-owned small business, you needed to potentially download all your documentation so that you in the hopes you wouldn't have to recreate it, unless of course something changed in your business. But you could download all of your documentation, and then it was going to close. Well, in light of things that have been going on in our world, including the most obvious with the pandemic, as well as SBA realized, we're getting into the last quarter. And again, if you've been in contracting for a long time, you'll know that a lot of the contracts come through in the last quarter, or at least the last quarter and a half, so that agencies can get their money spent. So basically because of those two reasons, SBA decided it would be really difficult to sort of force some of these transitions right now to occur sort of on a hard date. So that's why we created a phased approach. So starting July 15th, you could start to upload your documentation into the new certification system, with the idea that on October 15th, you will have to go through the new system. So self-certification via certified.sba.gov is currently still open and available, especially again, if you see things that you want to bid on with a lot of the opportunities coming through in this last quarter, they wanted to leave that mechanism available to you. So if you're still in there, that will still work, but you should at least start working on the certification process, because that does essentially go live on October 15th, and then the old system will get shut down. But if you're also new to this program and you haven't even self-certified, you can do that through Certify again until October 15th. As well, the third-party certifiers, you can work with them to get your information. Same thing, either in the current Certify system as a self-certification, or in the certification system itself on October 15th. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the third-party certifiers here in a second, though. Okay, so old system is just certified.sba.gov. Again, that's what you may hear as the term repository, which is what we've been calling it over the years. So that's the repository for your self-certification. You'll follow the same checklist that goes with Certify on what documentation you need to upload, which happens to essentially be the same documentation you'll put into the beta Certify as well. So this is, for a while they were advertising it as the new free online certification process. Well, now it does have a name. It's just beta certify.sba.gov. As well, so there's two other pieces that go with this program. You can either take the checklist. So again, I want to reiterate or reemphasize what Catherine told you in the beginning. Be sure you download the documents that we included as the handouts. If for some reason you can't get them to download off of there, they are on the Beta Certify site as well. But I encourage you to go out there because it includes the checklist of all the documentation that you'll need. It includes the certification option matrix that I'm going to actually talk about in a little bit, because I think it's really well done. And then there's also 3 guides to actually applying in this new system. So there's a quick start guide. There's a FAQ that kind of helps with some of those pieces as well. And then there is the full application user guide. So just so you know, I was told on a call we had with headquarters in the last few days that there's quite a few tickets in the help desk for application. As they've gone through those questions or those help tickets, she said the majority of those could be helped by just simply reading the detailed user guide. So we want to make sure when we do these workshops, we want to emphasize that the full user guide is out there, and it's actually pretty well done, and it actually has really nice screenshots even. So make sure you download the user guide and try that first, before you pull your hair out, trying to put in a help desk ticket. So make sure you go through that. But there's also, as part of the application process, so you can take the checklist, include all the documentations, or you can do 3 other things. You can include 1 certificate that you will have received by a third-party certifier if you choose to go that route, and I'll talk about that again in a second. Secondly, if you happen to be an 8A certified firm, all you would have to do is upload your annual review approval letter, your last annual review approval letter. That's all you need. And the third one is if you happen to be a veteran and you are CVE verified through the VA, you could upload that document. So If you don't have one of those three, then the fourth one is, again, you'll have to take the checklist and upload all of the documentation. So those are your options for actual documentation that you'll need to upload. So hopefully it makes sense. If not, on that piece of it, in terms of the dates, ask questions in the chat box again, and I'll try to do a better job of trying to outline that timeline for you. But again, here's the slide on kind of the changes, which is again the timeline. So as of October 15th, if you're going to pursue any opportunities on October 15th, you do have to apply into the system, and they're going to address applications as quickly as possible starting October 15th. So the sooner you get it in, obviously, the better. The regulation is requiring the program follow a very similar timeline to 8A. So within 15 days of that October 15th date, if you're in there, you will receive notification that your documentation has been received. Depending on if you're missing anything or whatnot, once they actually have everything, they have 90 days from the date of that they put it into processing. So once they have all the documentation, by law, they have to let you know within 90 days of certification. And again, I'm being told as of right now that will start on October 15th. But get your, obviously, if you can start now, go ahead and start getting, application into the system. And we'll talk about the third-party approvers here in a second. Okay, so there again is the timeline. So I'll leave that up there for a second. The May timeframe is just when the regulation actually was implemented. It went into the Federal Register and became law on May 11th. So again, this has already passed, but now through July 15th, they were telling people you needed to go in there into the certify system. If you were self-certified, you needed to download your documentation. If you didn't do that, that's okay. If you didn't get it done, that's okay. Don't worry. They made it sound like, oh my God, you got to get it because the system's going to go down. The system was going to go down. It didn't, again, for the reasons I already mentioned. But that's okay, even if it didn't, as long as you have all of your documentation anyway. They just wanted you to download your information so that hopefully you wouldn't have to do it again. But if you are well organized and you have all of your tax documentation and everything else and your articles of organization in a folder somewhere, it's okay as long as you have those things. And you didn't for some reason get them out of certify, just collect them again for the actual certification in beta. So again, starting July 15th, you could start processing or putting in your new application in the new system, with the idea that on October 15th is go time. So certify will close, beta certify will be the new system, and that's where you'll go to be certified. And I have a slide that I'm going to talk about, but because once certification goes into place, you have to think about that in terms of when you bid on work. So we'll talk a little bit about the timeline on that as well when I get to that section. Okay, so hopefully that time frame makes sense. So this is actually a screenshot of one of the handouts. This is the certification options, and I just thought that this was kind of nicely done. The boxes in the blue talk about sort of where am I at right now. If I'm a new applicant, I don't have any contracts and I don't have any certifications, including the self-certification, here's what I do. You might be a self-certified firm, but you have active contracts. So these are some important pieces of things that you have to think about. So if you're a new applicant, you've never self-certified before, you do have to go into the system with SBA. So what this option table tells you is you need to go into the beta system, and so now you need to apply. But again, we are leaving the self-certification option open under certify again through until, I guess, October 14th, with the new system starting on October 15th. But again, you also have the option of uploading your 8A annual review approval letter, your CVE if you're a veteran, or your third-party certification approval letter as well. So essentially you could do both. So if you know you're going to bid on something in September, let's just say you saw an opportunity, you know you're going to want to bid in September, and you're a new applicant, you've never been self-certified, get yourself self-certified so that you can bid on that opportunity. And I would suggest starting the certification process as well in the beta system so that you're ready to go if you're going to bid on something again after October 15th. But if you have something coming up, get yourself into the self-certification system so you can bid on that work. If you're self-certified and you have an active contract, the reason they included this, I think it is good and it's important to notice this as part of the regulation. So if you're self-certified, you've got a long-term contract, all of a sudden it goes to a certification. This describes post-regulation, or with the new change, what is it that you have to do? So if you were eligible as a WOSB at the time that you bid on that current contract that you have, you are considered WOSB for the life of that contract. So by regulation, you have to be WOSB at the time of offer. In this case, all we had was a self-certification. So you received a contract under your self-certification. It will remain past the date of certification. It goes back to your self-certification date. So you will still be considered WOSB through the life of that contract. However, there's always a but, if it is a long-term contract, so if it's a duration of more than 5 years, you will have to get certified at the end of that 5 years. So if it goes further than that, at the time that 5 years expires, you will have to make sure you're in the new system. So that's just a nuance to the regulation. You're going to do it anyway because you were self-certified anyway. You know you want to be certified because you want to continue to pursue work as a WOSB, so you're going to get certified anyway. So my suggestion is, that's the nuance to the regulation, that no matter what, at the end of the 5th year, you're going to have to get certified, but you're going to have done that anyway. So just the summary of that is make sure you just go and get certified right away. If you're a self-certified firm and you have no active contracts, again, same thing with the dates. You don't have to necessarily get formally certified until that October 15th date, again, depending on what you plan to pursue. And then the 3 on the left are the ones I already mentioned. So if you already are TPC certified, third-party certified, you're an 8A or your CVE, same thing. Get yourself, if you're going to bid on something before October 15th, get yourself into the other system, the self-certification system. Otherwise, be prepared to start getting yourself into the certification system. Okay, so hopefully I've beat that dead horse enough and you understand the timeline for things. Just a couple of things to think about on beta certify. So you can go through, and I apologize, this little fancy slide that they gave us. There's a few things that you can look at. It's very similar actually in look and feel as the regular certify site. So you can go up and do the am I eligible and kind of walk through some questions before you start this process. Again, you have checklists. The help desk is at this page too, so you can get to the email for the help desk. Obviously, you'll need to if you already know what you're doing and you're ready to go, this is where you'll actually create your account or log back in. They do use the login.gov method of authentication, as you maybe have seen with some other government sites. Again, the user guide does a pretty good job of helping you through all that, where you have to do like a 2-step authentication, like maybe you get a code sent to your cell phone or whatever for logging in. So you'll have a login process for that. Again, eligibility, you can go through here, just like with the Certify site, you can look at the different eligibilities for the different programs. But Beta Certify is currently the only housing the WOSB certification. It does not house 8A or HUBZone. Again, checklists are here, so a screenshot of the checklist of the different documents, but again, we included it as one of the handouts, so you should have the checklist that you can download. They'll even help you with getting started. Again, the user guide's going to lay this out, but they can step you through, you know, just like any program or just like any federal contracting vendor, you have to have a DUNS number first. You must be registered in SAM, as I mentioned. And then you're going to create account and beta certify that you're going to tag to your SAM registration. So again, your SAM must be active and ready to go. That's the checklist. I'll go back to the checklist here in a second, but I wanted to mention the knowledge base. That is where you're going to see updated documents at any time. So if you're on the main page of the beta site, you go to the knowledge base. Again, the handouts we gave you, they're all here as well. So as they update the FAQs or they update any of the procedures or changes like they did with this change with certify, the self-certification, you're going to find those things here. As they do training modules, they'll also post the links here. So I highly encourage you check back at this knowledge base area too every so often to see if there's anything updated. I included, we won't go over this in the essence of time. This is just a quick snapshot of what you'll need in terms of documentation, but it is literally spelled out for you in the checklist that we included in the handout. So I would highly encourage you just to download that and kind of go through it. It's really pretty self-explanatory. It's really not a difficult list. But if you do have questions, you can certainly email me here at SBA, or you can certainly, again, work with PTAC and they can help you with what documentation that you'll need. Talked about the knowledge base. Okay, so the third-party approvers, some of you may have known about these. It's the same ones that have been approved since the beginning of this program. So if you, we encourage you to work with free resources to get your documentation and upload it yourself into the system. Again, particularly PTAC is more than capable of being able to help you do this process at no cost. However, if you would like, you can use one of these third-party certifiers that have been approved by SBA to help you with your documentation. I don't know what their fees are these days, but they do all charge fees. Now, they're allowed to charge a fee to help you, and they've been allowed by SBA to charge that fee because they offer you other types of services as part of their organizations. So you may want to look at the different ones. I'm not going to recommend one over the other, but some of them, again, may offer you some other matchmaking services or other trainings. Some of them have, corporate partners that they can put you in touch with. So I think it would be important for you to make that decision based on looking at their websites and seeing what types of things that they offer for the cost. But ultimately, if you have no interest in working with their organizations and you just simply want to get certified in this program, there's no reason why you couldn't do this process on your own. You're going to have to collect the documentation for them anyway, so you might as well collect it for yourself. But again, I don't want to discourage you. I mean, there may be some services and things that they offer as part of that membership that may benefit you, again, depending on your business. So that's something that you'll want to consider. As a side note, I do want to mention, because this does come up, it isn't necessarily these particular organizations, but there are organizations that do have corporate members. If you decide you want to partner or subcontract to a large company, which is, again, not necessarily under the auspice of the WOSB contracting program, but you want to utilize your woman-owned designation to subcontract to a large company. Some large companies require that you may utilize some of these different organizations that they're members of. So it's just something to keep in mind. But if you are going to bid as a prime or a sub on a federal contract, as long as you're loaded into that system, you're good to go. You wouldn't necessarily need to join any of these organizations. So, but again, if you decide you want to, these are the ones that you would do that with. They'll give you an approval letter. And again, that's what I mentioned earlier. You would upload that approval letter, and that's all you would need to upload in order to get your certification passed. So there's the law again. I mentioned it. It's 13 CFR 127. That is the section of the regulation that covers everything you needed or wanted to know or didn't want to know about the woman-owned program. It's just important to know what happens during potential recertification. So under Part 400 of that regulation, in order to remain certified, you have to annually represent yourself that you still meet all of the eligibility criteria. So is that a full recertification? No. You go through a recertification under a program exam every 3 years. However, again, you have to annually represent yourself to still meet eligibility criteria. But also within that, not only annually, but make sure that you are still certified and meet criteria when you actually go to bid, because you have to hold your certification at the time of offer. So that's stated in the regulation as well. Your certification may be subject to protest. So I like to mention protest because I just think it's important to understand it a little bit. There is an entire section in the regulation on the process for protesting and appealing, but your status as a WOSB or an EDWOSB can be protested or challenged by an interested party. So an interested party is really one of three people. It's either others that are bidding against you, the contracting officer is always an interested party, and SBA is always an interested party on any open requirement. So again, I already mentioned how a contracting officer might protest in a current situation, but certainly someone who bids against you, who challenges your status. Now, in the self-certification world, that was much more prevalent because there was nobody really overseeing the certification. But now that we have the certification mechanism that's going to come into play on October 15th, I think you'll see less protest because you'll have your certification in the system. So anyway, that's basically it on protest. You have a time for appeal. You have a time to make your case. An interested party does have to have a good case for protest. You can't just say, well, I don't think they're woman-owned just because, they have to have a good case and so on. But that might be another time where you may be reviewed to make sure that all of your certification documentation is in place. Again, once it becomes a certification, that's a little bit easier process. It's been a little bit more of a process during the self-certification period, but it can happen. So just some resources. Again, I've already mentioned the website. I would suggest staying on top of the website. Again, because if any changes are made, that's where they'll post them. They do keep their FAQs and that options table on the beta site as well. So if there are any additions, they'll put that information there. I included the list of handouts again. So there's the handouts that are important for you to have. Websites, if you have any questions. So if you have questions about the WOSB program in general, eligibility, I don't know if I understand this particular eligibility requirement, you can email the WOSB program and they will get back to you. And actually they send you a automatic email that they'll reach back out to you within 24 to 48 hours. So they've staffed that well during this period. So you could email them questions. But if you have a technical question or something doesn't seem right about the beta site, they have their own help desk as well that you can email with questions to the help desk. But as I mentioned, please review, I emphasize reading the user guide thoroughly prior to sending any questions, because they are very backlogged at the help desk. So they're hoping that the user guide can help answer your questions before you have to email them. And that's it. We've come to the end. I appreciate your time today. I think that leaves us a little bit of time for Q&A, and then hopefully we can get done a little bit early.
Yes, thank you, Lisa. We have some questions already.
Okay.
From Kelly, when you were, I think it was like the second or third slide when you were talking about the percentage goals, for women-owned small business, is that goal only for sales under 250,000?
No, that's a good question. No, so I probably should have maybe given a little bit better detail about that. So every year, Congress sets prime contracting goals. So of that dollar amount that I mentioned earlier, that $450 billion contracting market, what Congress and SBA are looking to do is make sure the agencies are setting aside, at least in the case of woman-owned, 5% of those total prime contracting dollars for women-owned businesses to be awarded. So that's all contracting dollars across the board, all agencies. So no certain threshold, dollar threshold. Any contract, anything from a $10,000 contract up to, a multi-million-dollar contract. But again, keep in mind what I said, though. There's a lot of strategies and process that go into that when they do their acquisition strategies, because they may have a requirement or a contract with a very complex scope of work. Maybe it's $10 million. They need to be able to find, again, at least 2 small businesses or 2 woman-owned small businesses that could feasibly do that work. In that particular case, maybe that work is too complex, or it's too nuanced or niche or whatever it is, and they can't find any small businesses. That's when they'll put those types of contracts out for full and open competition. So it has a lot to do with the particular acquisition strategy of that particular agency as to what makes sense to set aside. But short answer is no, there is no dollar threshold. It's all contracting dollars.
Okay, great, thank you. I have another question from Kelly. Since she says, since my product is industrial and sells against large established manufacturers, how will the WOSB certification help my company?
Yeah, it's a great question. So again, in some of our other classes, we talk about overall marketing strategy. In your case, it sounds like subcontracting is probably a big majority of what you do. So you would want to first do some research to be sure that that is the case. So you want to go out and find out if there's any agencies that do direct purchase from a business like yours in your industry. If you see some potential out there that maybe an agency would directly source that from you, then you would want to apply to the program. But if in your research you find, or maybe you just your industry really well and you say, no, 100% of what I do is always going to be supplying that component to a larger manufacturing company that ultimately gets the contract, then in that case, no, you do not need to apply to this program. So this goes under that slide I showed about a woman-owned business who happens to be small. So large companies do have subcontracting goals as well that they have to meet on federal contracts. So they do want to find you, and they want to, essentially get credit for awarding a subcontract to a woman-owned small business. But you do not have to be registered in this program to get that benefit. You'd still need to be registered in SAM. You still need to show that you're a small business that's woman-owned. But assuming you have all of that documentation correct, and they award you a subcontract, they could take credit in their goals for awarding that subcontract to you as a woman-owned business. So do your research first. Again, be sure there is no direct sourcing opportunities from the government. Again, if not, if it's 100% subcontracting, then you would not necessarily need to apply to this certification.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Hopefully that answers.
I have a question from Emily. Can two women make up 51% of ownership and still qualify?
Yes, sorry about that. I should have mentioned that. Great question. Yes. Any combination of women, as long as that combination of women meet the 51%, then yes.
Okay, great. I have another question from Kelly. If I sell my product through a distributor who is already selling products to the government, does my women-owned small business have a benefit?
Well, that will depend on the type of vehicle used for purchasing under that distributorship. So it would depend. In most cases, yes, it would apply, but there are various types of supply chains on that are kind of specific with government. Some that would work, some it might not. So it is going to say, I'm going to say it depends on your particular situation and what that product is and what vehicle you're using. So I would suggest, if you're not already working with PTAC, probably sit down with a counselor and talk to them a little bit about what mechanism they're using to supply that product. Because in some cases it would apply, in other cases it won't, but it doesn't mean there's not another type of vehicle that we could get you on that it would apply. So the answer is yes or no. Again, it will depend on your situation. So you could either email me offline and we can talk about your particular situation, or again, I suggest you talk with a PTAC counselor. They can kind of sit down with you and cover it a little bit more, but potentially yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, Lisa. Kelly is wondering a follow-up to that. Do you have the email address for that
Oh, I
one?
apologize. I didn't put it on my thank you slide. I didn't put it on the beginning either. I apologize for that. Yeah, so my email is my first name actually is Melissa. So my email is Melissa, which is MELISSA .Tedesco, which is T as in Tom, EDESCO @sba.gov. And actually, why don't I real quick, just for, can you still see my screen, Catherine?
Yes.
Okay, I'll just do this real quick for you. And I apologize for not putting that on here earlier. That way you have it. If you all can see that, there's my email address. And incidentally, whoops, sorry. Let me do it since I'm already on here. Isn't it C Walsh?
Yes.
I'm so used to you just being in my cwalsh@unomaha.edu.
EDU.
Yeah. I'm used to it just, whoops, .edu.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, you bet. I'll make sure I include those in the future. So there's Catherine's email. She mentioned hers earlier. So if you want to work with a PTAC counselor, if you're not already, contact Catherine and she can help you get set up as well.
Okay, great. I believe that's all we have for questions. We have a few thank yous coming in. So yes, again, thank you, Lisa. This has been wonderful. And like Lisa said, you can email either of us if you'd like a link to the recording or have additional questions. Please just shoot us an email and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone. We appreciate your time today. Good luck with all of your endeavors. All right, have a good day. Bye-bye.